Hi, this is Cody Mitchell. I am doing a presentation for LIS 5503, Assignment 4C, Target Audience, Project Design and Delivery. Teacher is Dr. Martins through University of Oklahoma, College of Library Information Studies. So, as I said, my name is Cody Mitchell, and I'm going to present information literacy, original documents, and historical setting. So, original documentation, referring to items such as letters, written descriptions, pretty much anything that is directly tied to an event and would be made by someone who was at the event, usually at the time that the event occurs. For instance, this evening we will be talking about two specific documents that were written at particular stages in history and were written for and at these events. For instance, we will talk about the William Travis letter written at the Alamo, and we will also talk about the Declaration of Independence, which, as we know, is a founding document for our nation and helped bring the American colonies away from the British Empire and helped us to settle and create our own country. So, a bit more on original documentation. Why is this important? Why is it important to talk about and use original documentation? Well, to start off with, it is much more reliable in general. If you have something that was written immediately during or after an event, it will be much more reliable because the person who wrote it would have been there, would have been in the event, would have watched things unfold, and would be much more able to give an accurate description of what has occurred. Now, admittedly, you can also have second and third generation sources that are based on the original that can be just as reliable. But in general, if you have something that was written at the event, written by somebody who was there, it is much more reliable. And you can also have translations of things, which a translation in and of itself is not a bad thing. A translation can be very reliable, and it can be done in such a way as to allow a researcher, historian, archivist, anything, to use that resource in a reliable manner. Now, with that, it is generally better if you can do the translation yourself, so that you can go forward believing and knowing that the translation was done as best as possible. Is that always the case? No. For instance, I can look at I would have to look at translations for any language besides any language but English, because I do not speak any other language, and so I would have to rely on translations for studying documents outside of the English language. With that comes the problem of is this person reliable? Does this person do a good job of presenting the information? And you can run into great translations, and you can run into translations make you wonder if the person even knew the language or even knew what was going on. So it is very important to look at who translated this document. If it is somebody who is knowledgeable of the language spoken at that time and the way things would have been written, then there's a good chance that it is a reliable document. However, if you get into more ancient sources, you can tend to run it into problems such as political differences. If somebody is translating a document or transcribing a document that was written by a political rival, they're not going to be as likely to translate that document as reliable as possible. they will try to repaint the original author in as bad of a light as possible. So those sources, not so much. So that's some general information about original documents and why it is important. And we'll touch a little bit more on that as we go through the historical portion of our discussion tonight. So first off, I want to talk about the Declaration of Independence. Here I have a picture of the Declaration of Independence. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. Written in 1776. It's dated up here, July 4th, 1776. And it was written as a document to, as it says in the title, declare independence from Great Britain. Great Britain had been the empire controlling the 13 original colonies, what we would now consider the East Coast, Massachusetts, New York, that area. And England was in control of that area. And England was taxing the colonies beyond what they could do. The military the military presence of Great Britain was much more than would be legal. As in, the army would go and do things that were already written down as illegal, and yet anytime something would happen, the most punishment that a soldier would get is to be reprimanded and maybe sent back to Britain. For instance, there are stories of British soldiers who would kill a colonist or would attack and injure a colonist. And whenever the colonists would take the soldier before the government would pretty much tell them he's a British soldier. He can do whatever he wants. Britain was also taxing and creating laws against the colonies and restricting what they can do without the colonies having any kind of representation in the British Parliament. And that is the basis for how the current U.S. government is representative. It is a representative democracy. As in, we elect representatives who would then present the people's voice in government. And it is coming from grievances that the colonists had with how Great Britain was ruling the colonies. So, why is it important that we look at the original copy of the Declaration of Independence? Well, one, it gives a lot of information about how people spoke and spelled at that time. For instance, several times the spelling of words would be different in the original copy of the Declaration. That wouldn't necessarily be present on a more modern copy of it. Because at that time, it was more common for people to spell things as they sound. As in, if it sounds one way, they're going to spell it that way and go with that. And so you would end up actually having various different spellings of a word based off of how it sounds to different people and in different places based on their dialect. And for historical study, it is very important to know that, and so that you can understand who it is that you're talking to, who it is that you're talking about, excuse me. So let's read a little bit of the Declaration of Independence. And I will begin at the top of the document. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So as you can see, just by that section, a small paragraph, the authors of the Declaration are telling Britain that they are doing this because they believe it to be their natural right. They believe that it is given to them from a creator. Who that creator may be doesn't necessarily name this creator, but they believe that it is a naturally given right to do this. And they go on with this cause that they believe to be their natural right. And goes on, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And that is a very important line, because in British government, they have they're mandated by God. Okay, England generally is under the Church of England, a branch of the Roman Catholic Church. Long story, look it up. Interesting story. But they believe that the kings came with the mandate of God, that God declared them to be the ruler, and thus they're the ruler. Therefore, nobody can take that from them. If anybody were to ever try and physically take the government away from the king, then they can declare, mandate of God, and the people just have to go along with them. But the Declaration is saying, no, that people at the government should be conducted and have power based on the will of the people. If the people think that it is a good government, that it's a fair and just government, that then it's good. But if not, then the people have the right to go against that. And I want to read one more particular line from the Declaration that I think is very important. Movie buffs may recognize this quoted in the movie National Treasure, but I promise we are not going the same direction with this. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. The authors of the Declaration are saying that if a government continually goes against the will of the people and continually and deliberately are tyrannical towards them, are tyrants, then it is the people's right and duty to stand up to that government. The writers of the Declaration are standing up for something. They're standing up for what they believe in. They believed that America had the right to form its own nation, to rule themselves as they saw fit, under the directive of the people, and with the blessing and power given to them by the people. And they believed that Great Britain was not doing that they were not ruling in a just way. And thus, they declared the independence of the colonies. And that's what we're Americans today, and not Englishmen. Okay? And we'll tie these two documents in a bit later. But moving on to the second document, written by William Travis, who was a fighter in the Alamo. He was in charge of the Alamo. As we know, the Alamo, being in San Antonio, Texas, was originally land under the Mexican government. And Mexico being under the rule of Santa Anna, the Texans were not happy with the way things were done under Santa Anna. And the Texans were moving towards revolt. The Texans were trying to declare themselves free from Mexico, create their own nation that would eventually become a state within the United States of America, forming the state Texas that we all know. And the Texas Army gains control of San Antonio. It was a mission at the time, a church that had grew a town around it, and people would minister to the inhabitants of the town and those around them, under Catholic teachings. And the Texas Army goes and takes over San Antonio and set up their presence there. But the Mexican army comes along and decides they're going to take San Antonio back. And this battle is given credit for sparking the Texas Revolution and giving the people a cause to stand behind beyond independence, and giving them a immediate cause to fight. And thus the Texas Army went on and defeated the Mexican army, defeated Santa Anna, and gained their independence, thus creating the Republic of Texas, which would then become the state of Texas under the United States of America. But, as we know, the Battle of San Antonio, the Battle of the Alamo, did not go very well for the Texas Army. The Texas Army was defeated by the armies of Santa Anna, and everybody who was defending the Alamo would have been killed. Some people would have escaped. It's quite possible that some were allowed to live by directive of Santa Anna, but in general, most everybody was killed. But before that could happen, William Travis writes a letter, begging for aid, begging for people to come and help them. And because it is so short, I will go ahead and read the letter in its entirety. A commandancy of the Alamo, coming from the commander of the Alamo. Behar, the shorthand for what they called San Antonio, the Alamo at that time. February 24th, 1836. And it's interesting if you look at correct spelling in the letter. Instead of February, as we spell it, February. I hope I spelled that correctly. It's abbreviated Feby. Again, just a difference in the English of that time and the English of today. Moving on. To the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots, I am besieged by 1,000 or more of the Mexicans under Santa Anna. I have sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours, and have not lost a man. Enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion. Otherwise, the garrison are to be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I have answered the demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly from the walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. That sentence is underlined for importance. Then, I call on you in the name of liberty, and it's spelled as a name of patriotism and everything dear to the American character, to come to our aid with all dispatch. The enemy is receiving reinforcements daily and will no doubt increase to 3,000 or 4,000 in 4 or 5 days. If this call is neglected, I am determined to sustain myself as long as possible and die like a soldier who never forgets what is due to his honor and that of his country. And again, underlined, victory or death. William Barrett Travis, Lieutenant Colonel Commandant. P.S. The Lord is on our side. When the enemy appeared in sight, we had not 3 bushels of corn. We have since found in deserted houses 80 or 90 bushels, and go into the walls 20 or 30 head of beeves. I had to look that up myself, and that's beef. And they found beef and corn within the homes of the residents of San Antonio. Okay, as we see in this letter, Travis is saying we need people to come and help us. If we are going to survive this battle, we need reinforcements. We need others who believe in this cause to come and help us to hold San Antonio, to hold the Alamo. But, as he says, if this call is neglected, I am determined to sustain myself as long as possible. Meaning that Travis and those inside the Alamo have dedicated themselves to holding that fort, with or without reinforcements, and potentially giving their lives to do so. And why I chose these 2 documents, why I chose the Declaration of Independence and the Travis letter, because both of these documents have a similar voice. And they were written by different people, different times, different reasons, but they both contain the same theme. The theme of trying to call people together to stand up for what they believe in. Calling people to stand up and to oppose tyranny. To stand up and tell those who are ruling unjustly that no, this will not be tolerated. And the people of Texas believed that the Mexican government was oppressive and that they no longer wanted to be ruled by the Mexican government. And the people who wrote the Declaration, the people that signed it at the bottom of the document, committing treason against the country, against Britain. And they told these governments, we no longer want to be ruled by you. And we believe that we have a mandate to stand up and do what we believe in. And both of these letters go towards that theme. In the Travis letter, he's openly saying, we believe in this so much that we are willing to fight and die in this fort to support this cause, in the hopes that their last stand will reignite the revolution and help the Texas Army to continue to fight and overcome and eventually win their independence from Mexico. The Declaration, same thing, wanted to inspire people to stand up to Great Britain and to continue the fight, continue to try and show Great Britain that America should be independent. And as we know, Texas became independent and is now one of the states of America. And luckily, well before that, the Declaration of Independence worked, and the United States of America was born. And we are Americans instead of Englishmen. Both of these letters, both of these documents, show people willing to stand for something. Willing to stand and to fight for what they believe in. So my challenge for anybody and my encouragement to anybody who listens to this, find something that you stand for. Find something that you believe in so much that you are willing to stand up for it. That you are willing to stand up to other people and say, this is what I believe in. And even if other people don't agree with you, don't believe the same thing as you do, you are willing to stand up for that belief. Okay? You don't have to fight. This is not a call to fight. Yeah, we can find ways to to stand up without fighting. But what are you willing to stand up for? What is so important to you that you are willing to stand up for it? Stand up and say, this is what I believe in. This is what I believe is right. So, I hope that you will consider that. And if you would like to share a letter that you write or a document that you have written showing what you stand up for, I invite you to copy that letter in the comment section of this video. If any viewers are willing to complete a short survey, talking about what you like and didn't like about this video and what you may like to see in future videos for this, done by me or in general, I invite you to complete this survey. It will be completely anonymous. There will not be any information about you given or taken from this survey. The only identifying aspect of it would be if you say that you are a OU student listening to this as a class member of mine or because of another class. That is the only identifying aspect of this survey. If you follow the link and do the survey, then that will be your informed consent. So I invite you to do that. And if you feel so led, I invite you to talk about what you believe in so much that you're willing to stand up for it. So thank you. I appreciate anybody who has listened to this, and I hope I haven't bored you. Thank you very much, and have a good day.